Hey now, welcome to another edition of Refreshing Thoughts. I am your host, Chris Fresh, and this episode is going to drive everybody, including myself, crazy. Why? Well, Davey Damaged of Dave's Video Graveyard, which you should check out. It's a very not safe for anywhere podcast where they have a lot of attractive ladies and Casey and Dave talking about movies and pop culture and nostalgia. Anyway, Davey told me I'm not making enough eye contact with the lens and that I need to make more. Now, that makes me sort of feel weird because A, I'm an egomaniac and I'm sort of like looking at myself. And B, I've had some people go, don't stare into the lens. But then I think about, handsome people like Dan Larson and stuff that do look into the lens and talk to you and tell you a story like this. And then I think, I'm not handsome and tall like Dan and Secret Galaxy at all. So I don't know. So I need you to let me know, give me feedback. Do I need to make more lens contact? They do say the eyes are my nicest feature. I personally think my feet are, which says nothing about my face at all. Like it's a disaster. But yeah, I don't know. Now that Davey's mentioned, I can't get out of my head. Thank you to my good friends at The Shine. You can find them at The Shine Worldwide for our banger of an intro. Doing it rock and roll like it should be done. But let's get into sort of the toy happenings and pop culture happenings. I'm going to start off with what I just finished watching, and I'm not going to get into spoiler territory because not everybody's going to have a chance to have seen it yet. But Andor was just incredible. Like it, what a thrilling, well done ride. Um, Doing it in the 3 episode lots, it was like getting, what do you get, 4 movies or something? It felt like. Um, I I couldn't believe how much fun it was. Um, right up my alley politically. And thank you, Australia. We made the right choice, and resoundingly so. Um, it it was such a good ride, so well done. I can't wait to watch Rogue One now that I've seen it. Gee, if you don't want me making eye contact, I'm really staring into that camera. Um, Yeah, if you haven't given Andor a go because you're feeling like perhaps Star Wars um, wasn't for you anymore, the sequel trilogy didn't land, or you didn't like some of the spin-offs, or I personally liked it, but you didn't like the Book of Boba Fett or the Acolyte or anything like that. Um, you know, this is thrilling. Like if you liked Rogue One, please go watch it. Like not just for Star Wars, it's just good TV. Like it was so good. Yeah, just and the performances and the casting, the way it was shot, the way it looked. The only slight bummer for me is I'm a big Jimmy Smith Bail Organa fan, and he's been a consistent the whole way. They say scheduling issues. I don't know, like what Jimmy Smits couldn't find time to do what Benjamin Bratt did. Like Benjamin Bratt was okay. He just there's certain things that happened where I thought he came off as a bit of a prick, where I maybe could have taken it a little better from Jimmy Smits. I don't know. Maybe I was meant to take it that way. Benjamin Bratt's a fine actor. Like, there's nothing wrong with the performance. I just missed Jimmy Smitz's Bail Organa, and Jimmy Smith's aged remarkably well. But if that's my biggest complaint of the show's amazing. Like, and it is amazing. Like, it reinvigorated a lot of my passion for Star Wars. And yeah, it just reminded me of just how good season 1 was because it was a while ago and you forget. And yeah, if you haven't seen this, look, I'm not sure it's one you sit with the whole family and watch, for a family romp. Maybe check out Neil and the kids on Skeleton Crew for that. But if you are just after amazing storytelling and a thrill ride, even though we know what's going to happen with A New Hope. We even know what's going to happen with Rogue One. You know, this was just amazing. It did. I already don't like The Rise of Skywalker. Like, it's not for me. If it's for you, I would never take that away from you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Just for me, I felt they didn't stick the landing of the sequel trilogy, and it then made me go, The Last Jedi. Well, what, like Krusty the Clown? What the hell was that? Because none of it. It was just a bit messy. I think we can all agree it was a bit messy. Even I, who like the prequels, can go over some of it. Um, but yeah, it makes me like the stakes are so high here. The idea that the ending of Return of the Jedi so lacked permanency. It's just a bummer. Like, I get it's just how stuff is, but you know, I really felt the stakes in this. And I feel the sequel trilogy don't respect the stakes, but not that it matters. It's like it's just fan talk. You know, it's just one fan airing his opinion about one movie in a whole batch of Star Wars stuff. So there's plenty of Star Wars for me to enjoy. I'm just saying, like, it's my, my personal thoughts and feelings on it. I don't want to yuck anybody's Rise of Skywalker yum. Um, but yeah, it was thrilling. Another thing I did, I went back to the movies, keep going to the movies. This time I saw the Thunderbolts with some trepidation. I'll be honest, I didn't see the Captain America movie, even though I really like Anthony Mackie's Sam Wilson. I just didn't get around to it. And so went and saw Thunderbolts and loved it. And I say that as somebody that day to day struggles with mental illness and bipolar in particular. I suffer from bipolar too. Um, I like to talk about it and be open about it and not hide it. There's still a stigma on mental health, even though people think it's everywhere and it's talked about and stuff. I don't think it's talked about with understanding and logic and compassion. And, you know, there's no one size fits all with it either. But to see what I took from it, and we all take our own personal things, to see my mental illness manifested into a character almost was fascinating. And I felt well done and not disrespectful or mocking or anything. It was engaging, you know, relatable in some regard. Um, but once again, the character performances in Thunderbolt, you know, the second Suicide Squad movie did a pretty good job. I think it's underrated. But you know, this is what you'd want the Suicide Squad to be. Like the Thunderbolts, it was just a thrilling ride, engaging characters, good performances, told a great story, not a ton of skybeam. Um, you know, great end of credit scene. Um, just a good time. Like, there's still time to go see Thunderbolts at the cinema. If you just want a good Marvel time, I think that's one of the better Marvel movies. Now, that's not to discredit. There's lots of good Marvel movies. I've enjoyed my Marvel ride for the most part. Some of them, some of them, some of the lesser ones I actually liked. So, your mileage may vary, but Thunderbolts, I can safely recommend, I feel. Like, I really, really enjoyed it. Um, it didn't like none of this, like Andor and Thunderbolts is interesting from a toy perspective. No, neither gave me that buzz of I want to go out and collect because I'm taking in these properties. So that's a bit of a different experience. Maybe it's a maturity thing. Maybe it's a money thing. Maybe it's what's on the shelves thing. Um, but they certainly made me want to go. It made me feel safer going to the movies. Going, oh yeah, there's still good stuff to spend a lot of money to go to the movies to see a movie. Yes, but I think the reason I sort of wanted to record tonight, something very monumental and big is happening in my life this weekend, and I'll talk about it on the next episode. You're probably going to hear a big crossover podcast come over soon, so some of you may get where I'm going with this. But the um, the reason I wanted to record now was to talk about the tariff situation and the layoffs at Super7. It's a lot. Some of the art staff and design team at Super7 said that they lost their jobs due to the tariff situation. And Blake from Toy Collector Magazine went on the Toy Anxiety show, which podcast, YouTube channel, I can't recommend it enough. And Toy Collector Magazine for us Aussies, I believe, is going to be getting Australian distribution, so keep an eye on for that. I still check news agencies. I spoke on the last Refreshing Thoughts how I like magazines, so I'll keep an eye out and I'll let you know when it hits our newsstands, if it does, how much it is. But I'll definitely be picking it up. But Blake said he spoke to Brian Flynn from Super7, who revealed that they received a massive tariff bill on the batch of Ninja Turtles, which I'm assuming are the 2003 Ninja Turtles that they were doing. They're getting rave reviews, and they got a big tariff bill, and they needed to come up with money. And a way that a company like this comes up with money is they cut assets, and their assets were their staff, their people. So you cut a whole lot of wages. There's your money. Um, so far, touch wood, the other companies haven't really resorted to this yet. So I don't know if there was more to what led to Super7 laying off 45% of its workforce. Um, you know, any company, like, think about jobs. You take away 45% of the employees at our workforce, it would completely change our companies. And for 45% of Super7 to go indicates to me that their business model is going to change. And, you know, a lot of people rant and rave about their dollies and their action figures. I'm no different. Here I am on YouTube, white middle-aged guy talking about toys on YouTube. Here's something new. But you know, what my first thought was, you know, you try not. Everybody goes, I don't want to get political, but you have to get political. Of, you know, we're going to bring manufacturing back to America, and you know, we're going to put these tariffs on and do this. And that. Well, here's an example where 45% of a company just lost their jobs because of your tariffs. Your citizens, the Americans buying the products are suffering because they're having to pay more for them. People have lost their jobs. None of this madness makes sense. You know, all the while, I'm not going to get into accepting jets and forming friendships with the enemy. Um, you know, I, I almost want to go on a rant. I'll save that for geek dudes. But it's gross. It's very gross what's going on in the world, you know, and feel free to yell at me in the comments. I hardly get any comments. I'll take the engagement. Um, but you know, this was really sad. These people had homes, they would have had families, they had lives, they need money. You know, times are already tough. You know, the cost of living. Like, I enjoy a pineapple juice, just for the taste of it. And no, I'm being silly. And a 2 liter bottle of pineapple juice was $6.35 at Woolworths and Coles tonight. I couldn't believe it. Like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, "I can't believe a 2-liter bottle of juice is costing this much." Like, the cost of living has gone up for everybody. And, so these people now face uncertainty because it's not like other toy companies with these tariffs are feeling stable and are going, "Come on, there's plenty of room for all of us." Everybody's going, "This is really uncertain time. We don't know what we're gonna do moving forward. We don't know how much people will be willing to pay for our product." It's a very uncertain time, and now these people are working in this niche industry, and they've lost their jobs, um, and it sucks, you know? Um, and this is a real world consequence of stuff that we bicker about on Discords and podcasts, and we can go, let's not get political, we don't want to make it political, we don't want to talk about a company's just gone and people have lost their jobs because of a political situation. I don't know how we don't talk about this. you know if you collect Super 7 figures, and I've been a collector of Super 7 figures, if you are all in on the Thundercats, I don't know that you're getting all your lunatics. If you were all in on 2003 Ninja Turtles, I think maybe that wave two that they showed you might get that, and then probably nothing else. Because I think Blake was saying they went from, like, in their sculpting department down from 20 people to 5. It doesn't sound like Super 7's planning on making a whole lot more toys. And I want to say to the people that lost their jobs Super 7 and to the people trying to hold the fort, continuing there. I'm appreciative of all their hard work. I collected their Ninja Turtles Ultimates, and I consider, apart from the Mondo soft vinyl, which you saw me gushing over, embarrassingly so, on the last refreshing thoughts, I consider their Ultimates perhaps my favorite version of the Ninja Turtles, because it was like the Playmates Turtles, but better. Like the OGs, but modern and big and better and cool. And I didn't really have QC issues and stuff like that. So to see that people that have designed something and worked on something that's made me happiness now face this uncertainty because of a situation that sucks, um, it's a bummer. Like when Mattel ditched Masters of the Universe, it was Super 7 that kept that flame burning. And, we got Snake Mountain. I wish I had have had the money to get the Thundercats layer. They deliver. I didn't dig on their party wagon, and don't get me started on the Mikey's party wagon. That's a Toy Power reference. Go listen to the Toy Power podcast, because it is no, that's me. You can listen to me. The Toy Power podcast. It's a good time and an excellent, excellent, excellent toy podcast. But anyway, they the they did amazing things, and Mattel weren't going to continue classics. Mattel weren't going to be doing a filmation line. Like Brian Flynn, I know he's got his critics, and not everything was perfect. But Super 7 really stood up as a small company and tried their best to give us some cool stuff. And we got plenty of cool stuff. And I don't know where to for that company now. NECA seems like they might be able to push through, like they're big enough. Mondo are being very transparent into their American customers. They're going to pass on some of the tariff costs. I'm in Australia. I actually might get a win here by not having to pay tariffs, but I still have to pay considerable shipping if they can ship here. The soft vinyl Ninja Turtles are now a no-go because I am not going to pay tariffs on top of shipping on top of that. Like, I've just got to hope for licensing to allow them to be able to ship to Australia if I want to continue. But uh, that's mainly for Bebop and Rocksteady if they get done. Like, because, everybody keeps going, oh, well, this situation's going to sort itself out. And, they've already made some concessions. And it's like, yeah, not big enough. Like, the only way this sorts itself out is if it completely goes away. And I don't think that's going to happen. You know, I I felt a great sense of relief here in Australia. No political party is perfect, and I certainly as a I grew up in West Heidelberg in the Olympic Village in Melbourne. Some people would describe it as a ghetto in the 80s. And even now, like it's not nice. I'm famous for its West Heidelberg Mall and Bell Street. Everywhere else is a mall, but that's the Mall. Um, but I grew up very poor. Um, I've lost my train of thought. I wish I could rewind and go, why was I talking about where I grew up and its importance to Ninja Turtles, Master Universe? No, I've completely lost it. It is late. I am tired. But I guess you got to hear where I grew up. Cool. Um, well, that's alarming that I blanked out like that. So you're all screaming, going, "You were talking about this," and it's like I'm going to hear this and go, "I was talking about that." Maybe it'll come back to me. But yeah, I don't know. It just sort of I was talking about Mondo. I was talking about Bebop and Rocksteady. I was talking about not wanting to spend money. I was talking about not wanting to pay the tariffs. How did West Heidelberg come into that? Don't charge tariffs to West Heidelberg, like they're already struggling as much as it is. But no, collecting is a luxury. Um, and you know, I can sit here and complain that I might not get myself final Bebop and Rocksteady, or it's but the ultimate thing is maybe collecting just isn't for the average Joe. I can look at my collection. I set up my Mondo turtles and I was happy with it. I'm not going to show photos of how I've displayed them just yet because I want to surprise some people that are coming to visit. And they can go, oh, cool, rather than, "Oh, I feel like we've seen this 50 times already." But, you know, maybe everything I've got, and I've got a lot, is it. You know, I've got some pretty cool representations of things I like. And maybe that's where Christmas time I might get something, birthday time I might get something. I, I'm not even sure that companies are going to be pumping out product like they were, because that became overwhelming as well of trying to keep up. And I'm really rattled by how I lost my train of thought. Doesn't matter. Um, you know, companies are going to be going, well, if the consumer is going to go, this is my breaking point financially, there's no point even trying to make it because people won't be able to afford it. And there's no point, our profit margins are already small. So there's no point, I don't know. I don't know what this means for collecting. I do know if you're working in the industry, it would be a very scary time. Um, and I'm grateful for the Thundercats. I'm grateful for Master of the Universe. I'm grateful for the stupid reaction figures that every time I'd get a reaction, I'd go, "Why'd I spend so much money on this reaction figure?" And it's like, I don't know, it was kind of cool card art. And yeah, I don't think I own a reaction figure that I love, and I own quite a few of them. It's the genius of Super 7. They were filling a void, and Mondo have maybe stepped into the Super 7 void. I don't know. We'll see. They're going to be doing Master Universe figures, but who knows how much they'll cost. I know what I'm paying for the real Ghostbusters. Now, I understand licensing is apparently the reason behind the insane price that it costs to collect the 6-inch real Ghostbusters line from Mondo. And I do believe that. Like, I don't think Mondo is trying to gouge us. But I don't blame anybody for going, that's too much for me. I was talking to Todd Eastman from Wrestle Radio Australia. There's a wrestling component. Here's Wrestle Rock. We had a great show this past Friday. But he was talking about how he wanted to get a retro Bobby the Brain Heenan figure. But he just couldn't justify the shipping and the figure and stuff. And it's like, I get it. And he's not even a collector from what I understand. Certainly not a big toy collector, but sees a one-off Bobby Heenan, thinks it's cool, and sees the price and goes, "That's not for me." And you know, children's toys are still going to be on the shelves. Let's not get into Trump math about how many dolls a 15-year-old girl can have made by the country Mattel. Um, but what we can sort of do is go, well, Hot Wheels always going to be on the shelf. Minecraft toys, One Piece when that's running hot, How to Train Your Dragon, Stitch, Barbie, Disney princesses, like that stuff will always continue. Squishmallows always seem to do well. My family love them. That stuff's always going to exist. But the dollies for big boys, I don't know where to from here. Wrestling will probably always have a presence. Mattel's done very well, just re-upped its thing. Star Wars, people start picking and choosing. Marvel, people start picking and choosing. Mattel's just picked up the DC license for in a year's time or so. What does McFarlane do from here? One of the ownership group of McFarlane just bought EB Games, or they bring GameStop Canada, which is EB Games here. The Diamond distribution's been picked up by NECA. The industry is, it seems like it rapidly changes from day to day. Like by the time I get this out, some news could have broken. This becomes obsolete. I don't know where as collectors we're going to go, but we've had a good run, and I'm thankful for the cool stuff. I remember I was telling a story. My nephew was Secret Santa got me the ultimate Raph, and I was just like, "Ah, just gonna get one. Raph's my boy. Just gonna display it." Next thing I knew, I had all four turtles, and then you saw the size of Bebop and Rocksteady, and Shredder, and it was just like the Playmates toys, but on steroids. They look so cool. Like, how could you not collect them? And I didn't go all in. I did start picking and choosing, particularly when they got to variants and stuff like that. But without Super 7, I don't think that stuff gets done. Playmates are incapable of making figures that good. And NECA have certainly had an amazing run of their figures, but they're very different. They did the movie, they've done the cartoon. Now they're a company I've had some QC issues with. My goodness, their weapons love to break. Hands love to break. That plastic that they sometimes use, woof. And customer service wasn't great when I asked for help either. Paint app on Rocksteady, I ended up just having to buy a second Bebop and Rocksteady twin pack and sell off. I couldn't live without Bebop and Rocksteady. Like, that's not great. Screw you, Joel, that dude that sold toys here in Australia. He ghosted me on that one. I think he's out of business now, so I don't have to warn you about his company. But I'm talking about if you collect toys. But yeah, it's interesting times. Interesting times to be a collector. I've still got my HasLab Ecto 1 coming this year. Wrestling wise, Zombie Sailor Toys have released quite a lot of figures I want to get. I'm not in a position to be able to buy them at the moment, so I just wait and hope they don't sell out. Zombie Sailor just announced an Owen Hart figure in the rocket gear and the oh, it's I've been waiting for that one for a long time, and it's like couldn't be worse timing financially for a pre-order. But that's how the collecting goes. Here I am going, oh, will we be able to collect? And here's me saying I can't afford to collect. Isn't that the collector's dilemma? We want everything and nothing at the same time. But yeah, I want to hear your thoughts. Where does collecting go for you? It's it's probably just scaled back for me, to be honest. I don't think I ever stop. There's always going to be something that I'm going to want to get. I want to get the Public Enemy figures that are out. The Owen Hart, there's going to be Brian Pillman's, the Ghostbusters line. I've got my HasLab Ecto 1 that's coming this year. But yeah, I was going to ask the question of the big rubber guys by the Major Brothers. That's a really cool line, pick and choose. But what do they do? Because their figure's already kind of high, but they have to be. You understand why they cost what they cost. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know where they go. Nobody's really making statements. Like a few places have, um, but I guess everybody's really uncertain. It's an uncertain time. But as angry as we can get, think of the people that just lost their jobs, and maybe thank those people. Show the appreciation of the work that they did, because what else can we do for them? I guess I'd hate to try and get a Kickstarter off the ground, because where are you going to get your stuff made if you can't get a factory in China to build your stuff? Um, yeah, I don't know. Like, it was such a dumb decision to vote those monsters back in America. I'm confused by it. I still don't understand, you know. Um, and that it might put you off my channel, and I don't care. Like, I'm probably not your person anyway. You know, I'm I try to be empathetic. I believe everybody should be able to access healthcare. I'm anti-gun. Um, I believe education should be free. I believe in gay rights. What gender somebody is doesn't bother me. It's just, who cares? Like, yeah, there's bigger problems in the world than all of that. Like, if they're your issues, you've got issues. Um, you know, aren't we all just trying to get by? Find a little love in our lives. Rather than this screaming at each other and this anger and this culture war. It made me so proud that Australia said, "What culture war? Where?" Because they tried turning it into it. The Murdoch media try their best. It's all just garbage. Everybody's caught up in echo chambers, myself included. I select what news I take in. Pretty much just last week tonight with John Oliver, with the occasional John Stewart clips. Um, you know, like listen to a bit of George Carlin on the old Instagram reels, because I'm too old for TikTok. Um, but yeah, eh, I I hoped, I guess when we were coming up in the '90s and stuff, and we heard of World War II and we heard of Vietnam and the hippies, and you know, I guess we envisioned the future would just be better and nicer. I, you know, and it's got way more elements of Terminator 2 and RoboCop than I was expecting. Um, you know, and I think we're better than this. And what sort of gives me hope in Australia is that it was the first election ever that there were more millennials and Gen Z voting than the boomers. Nobody cares about Gen X. We've never been cared about. Or I'm a Zennial apparently, because I was born in 1979. If you're born between 77 and 82, I think you're a mid generation. But anyway, the you know it, the, the young people of Australia decided this election, and they decided what was important. And the it's very confusing to explain to an international that the Liberal Party are the Conservative Party and the Labor Party are the Liberal Party, of liberal beliefs, not liberal in name. And, overwhelmingly, the Labor Party won the election here. And the Conservatives got destroyed. And that gives me hope, at least for Australia. You know, we saw what happened in Canada. Even we saw what happened in England. It doesn't we don't we don't have to try and hold each other back. Like, why can't we just hope for something better? Like, this whole, but we're worried about war, but we're worried about um national debt and stuff. It's like, who are we in debt to exactly? I don't understand. I need smarter people than me to explain it. Yeah, sure, housing affordability is a real issue. I rent. I'll never be able to afford to buy a house. I grew up in West Heidelberg in government housing. Um, my mother died. She was a pensioner. My father was a pensioner. He passed away. I got left audio cassettes and spoons from select country towns of Australia. That was it. There was no money coming my way. I've never really had high paying jobs. So these toys that you see, I'm not rich, I'm just reckless. Um, and I'd like to think one day I could own a home, but it's hard. It's getting harder and harder, and I can understand people's frustrations and stuff like that. But attacking civil liberties, attacking each other is not the way to fix this. You know, removing things like universal health care and free education and, holding down minorities and women's rights to choose and stuff, that doesn't make our lives better. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. And celebrating a belligerent dictator while people who have created things you love now are going to struggle to eat. I don't get it. I don't get it. It's not what the Jetsons told me the future was going to be. Still don't have that flying car either. Don't think I'm going to see that either. But yeah, I didn't mean to sort of end on a bit of a bummer note. I don't want this channel to be crazy political, but I also want it to be a real world reflection of my life and what's going on in the world. And it's kind of hard not to talk about, even when talking about toys and pop culture. Because if you watched Andor and didn't get a strong, resounding message about good and evil, I don't know what to tell you. Um, like, I'd find it baffling. You know, I wish I wish I could just switch my brain off and just worry about whether Essendon in the AFL here, or the New York Knicks playing in the playoffs, or the New York Giants, or just care about sports team, go sports, or worry about who's been cast in what movie, and they're my only worries. No, they're escapes. They're not your only concerns. You know, try and I'm not here to lecture, but I just hope we can be a little kinder. That's always what I'm going to be preaching here. Even me, like, I might not agree with you politically, but I don't wish you ill will. I just wish you to find some kindness, you know, because if racism and oppression and stuff aren't your issue, and you're voted on money or whatever it is, eh, I don't know. I'd like to think if I became a billionaire, I'd still care about my fellow person, you know, and you may not be a racist, you may not be a homophobe, but you certainly didn't think they were a big enough deal to focus on. And that's kind of a bummer because we need to love each other and protect each other. Um, yeah, I don't know. I, I could go, and after all that, throw me $5 Australian. I think that's kind of gross to plug the Patreon. Didn't talk me from a cheeky flash on the screen, but you won't hear it on audio form. No, I just want everybody to be kinder to each other. Myself included. I practice every day trying to be better. There'd be some people out in the world that would go, Chris Fresh is an asshole. I think I've been called a monster many times and stuff. And it's like, yeah, I'm not a perfect person. Um, but I certainly try to be kind and loving to those in my orbit. And life's hard for all of us. And let's try and not make each other's life harder. Um, Hopefully, the next refreshing thoughts will be talks of celebrations and good times. Hopefully, some toys. Andor's finished. I might watch Rogue One. I might talk about that, and hopefully, you've had time, and then there's no spoiler concerns, and we can talk about that a bit more. And yeah, keep your ears to the ground to the Geek Dudes cast. podcast because I believe there's going to be quite a few special guests. It may be a crossover, if you will, with some podcasts. I just can't quite think who they would be. Um, Thank you for listening to Refreshing Thoughts. You can follow me on socials, and I am Chris Fresh, and I'll see you, I'll talk to you in a little while.